And I was very interested in your ideas of what depopulation really is, in the most basic form.
I mean, I don't want to be short.
Ah.
No, I'm just saying, because, everybody, can't go against the population. But I really do believe that this concept of bed sitters and one beds is ultimately going to destroy the family life, or rather reduce our population. I don't think it is in the West's interest at all to have Africa have a large population.
Hey wadau manze, this is the result of a simple conversation on real estate that spirals into we have to bring you Nicha Kente.
Cocomelon is a stimulant. It's like, think about like Red Bull. It's like, when you have a Red Bull.
It's cocaine for babies.
Okay, I didn't say it was cocaine. I said it was Red Bull. That's a difference. But the thing is, it really is, everything has an impact on how you are.
Nicha Kente is a real estate consultant with a background in architecture.
Those apartments are not necessarily built by actual Kenyan developers. It's built by the Chinese. And if you go and take a walk there and look now, all the lights are not on in the evening. But the thing is, they've just built a large number of one beds in Kilimani. And it's actually, if you ask me, it's sort of killing the residential market area there. Because where are the tenants going to come from?
See, I've always known that real estate is more about design, but from this conversation, I'm left wondering whether real estate is more about politics.
If you look at a lot of government buildings, or even just like courts and courts would be a good example here. They're built to make you feel a certain way. So like some buildings you enter and you feel small, and it's on purpose.
Or real estate is more about psychology.
If you look at restaurants, having red makes you hungry. There's a lot. This subject could go on forever, but there's a lot of different emotions and things that is evoked by color, evoked by materials. That's why when look at this co-working space, we have an illusion of green because it makes you feel more relaxed.
So some restaurants I'm eating because of the paintwork they did, not because of
no,
what
it can make you
me
feel
there.
hungry.
I'm your host, Dr. Kingori, and here's another reason to stay subscribed to our channel. Kama uja subscribe, this right here is another reason to hit subscribe and turn on the notifications bell. Na kama umependa set yetu, like location yetu vile inakaa, this is happening at Wojo Africa. Wojo is a premium co-working space located in Upper Hill, Nairobi, Makiwa Hotel, formerly Crown Plaza. If you're familiar na your concept ya co-working space, like an office that has been set up for you, unakuja unapigwa rate fiti, and everything you need in the office ama in an office setting has been done for you. You need to get in touch with the team at Wojo Africa. The contact details tumewekea hapa kwa screen. One of the most interesting things I heard you say is how difficult it is for most people to own homes. And I've heard the concept of zoning, but when I hear it from you, it vibes differently. We'll get into that. But then offset, I bring up a conversation, and I can quote John Oliver. He's one of the biggest comedians in the US. He categorically stated that at the age of 35, like if anyone has attained the age of 35, in fact, anyone below the age of 35, it's impossible for them to own a home in America. It's impossible. And then when we are conversing with you, that seems to be the vibe, that we may imagine that owning a home, or you can save to it, but the system has technically been rigged against most people. So however hard you work, however diligent you are in your area, chances are that it's not your fault, but you may not be able to afford a home.
I mean, in the landscape now, it's almost impossible to own a home if you're younger. I think when we last spoke, I mentioned that millennials, I think the maybe majority of us, the biggest asset that you own in your own name would probably be a car. And even if you own the car, you're paying a monthly payment. So you had a deposit, and now you're paying every month. Gen Zs own phones. So again, like I said, that's why, when the older generation asks us, why are you so attached to your Instagram or your TikTok? We literally use our Instagram and TikToks like real estate, because that's what we own. So even if I take myself now, I mean, I think when I was in my mid-20s, I tried to see if I could purchase an apartment or purchase a house. Because obviously in my family, I was being told, when I was your age, I started looking for a place to buy and I got a mortgage. So, you think, let me emulate my grandparents and try and do the same thing.
Yeah.
As soon as I walked into the bank, they asked me to put down a deposit of, I think, 4 million, which obviously I didn't have at the age of 24. And then after that, they wanted me to get a guarantor. Already, that stopped me in the tracks. But even before getting that information, it was so intimidating walking into the bank. And of course, everybody looks at you and is like, why are they going to bother? So, which is why I can see why SACCOs and more informal financial institutions have come up. But again, it sounds so easy. Like they always write down these easy steps to just have these things in order and you qualify, but that's not the case.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the biggest problem I'd say is that our financial mortgages are just not affordable for the young people.
Yep.
So it's affordable for people over a certain age. I'm not an expert, but I would say probably people around 45 and over are the ones that can actually
afford
or meet the criteria. Let me put it like that.
Okay.
Because there's a criteria, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
And does this, when you say like you walked into a bank, is this to say that having walking through, you cannot avoid a financial institution to invest in real estate? There is no other route.
Unless you're getting it for free or you're inheriting it.
Okay.
Even if you were starting a business, you'd have to get financial funding somehow, right? So either it's angel investors, so your family give you money, or you take your business plan to a bank or to another financial institution, and you get your funding from there. So everything, if it's going to grow, you need financing at some point, even for yourself to develop. You went to school, that cost money, right? So you had to pay for your education. You didn't just arrive there. You paid everything has an investment. So.
And is in this about ambition? Say, for example, at that young age, when they ask you for a down payment of 4 million, this is probably 10% or 20% of the value of the property you're looking for, right? Then what happens to the idea of starting small in terms of alternatives? Because one of our guests described at Kenya, described the Kenyan real estate as a bedsitter economy, right? Bedsitter means like low-income houses, strategically placed near universities and colleges, because that way you're sure to get some money, right? So you are starting with a property that requires you to put a down payment of 4 million. Is in this where feasibility studies come in?
Okay, but see, my question there then goes is where do you get the land? See, you just said if I instead put up a structure, right? But then how do I purchase the land? I think there was a time when you could purchase land much easier and you could put up structures. And the only reason people are selling us bedsitters now is because if you look at the reality, can you actually purchase a piece of land? And I'm not talking about professionals who are in banks or good corporate ladder areas, not like those kind of professionals. I just mean an average young person, let's even say 27, finish university, maybe has their own business, doesn't work for an insurance company or a bank. How would they be able to afford a good mortgage rate? It's not that you don't have the will to pay it, it's that the criteria to even qualify for the mortgage, that's where they cut you off. So for example, when I gave the example of the 4 million, the apartment was only worth 6 million. But because I was the age of 20, because I was 25, and I hadn't been banking with that bank for a certain number of years, they had given me such a high
threshold.
Yes. But so, but then you ask them, well, if you're looking for all of these criteria, clearly I can't make them. So that was in a way of, I want to say, I don't want to call it a scam, but in a way of they're pretending that they're open to helping you, but they're not.
It's a barrier.
Yeah, so really you're removing the people that you actually want to deal with, yet you're advertising that you can help the younger people, or that generation. Now I'm sure it would be easier, but now we're, 8 years later, 7 years later? That's different, yeah. So that's what I mean. So they changed the criteria when you're there. So obviously, if you make a lot of money, you've been employed for a certain number of years, yes, you will get a great deal to get the mortgage. But if you haven't been doing that, then you don't get it.
And when it comes to borrowing, we've also had a conversation on this platform. I will take you back to starting small. We've had a conversation on this platform that yes, the interest rates are over the roof. Like in Kenya, there's no way universally a return on investment in real estate has been set at a certain price. But in Kenya, the interest you pay on a loan is way more than you can recoup in terms of investment. That we have people who have invested who have to go back to their pocket to pay the mortgage, right? But we still see houses being built. The sector seems to be booming. Kwani, who is investing?
So an example would be like in Kilimani area is saturated with 1-bedroom apartments and small 2-beds. But those are mainly built by Chinese contractors. And the Chinese, for lack of a better term, I'll say they have free money or low interest money. So they get money from their governments. They come here. They've built these huge apartment blocks. Some of them, personally, if you ask me, I think it's quite hideous on the Kilimani skyline now. But they've built huge apartment blocks. There's very low occupancy in those apartment blocks. And the truth is, because they've built it for such cheap money, for them, it's like an investment in the future for them. So those apartments are not necessarily built by actual Kenyan developers. It's built by the Chinese. And if you go and take a walk there and look now, all the lights are not on in the evening. But the thing is, they've just built a large number of 1-beds in Kilimani, and it's actually, if you ask me, it's sort of killing the residential market area there, because where are the tenants going to come from for those 1-beds and 2-beds?
Okay.
Yeah. And the money is actually, I don't want to, I have to be careful with my words here. I get it that there's a side that we look at it that they're investing in the country. I understand that. But at the same time, they're investing in the country, but they're not actually helping the large population of the country that needs the help. And yes, some of them fall into affordable housing, but it's more of like an investment scheme, I would say. So all of those apartments, I'm quite sure if there's young people that I would say, and young being under the age of 35, not a large number of those places are owned by younger people. So it's either owned by governments, and I can't confirm this whether it's owned by the Chinese government or it's owned by individuals here who've made a lot of money and who are investing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, you say a majority of the population cannot afford the houses that are being built.
No.
Right? So if you are to talk to someone, especially having been in the sector for that long, for someone looking to invest, what do you think is a strategy that would be best to follow under the circumstances?
You see, I still believe in real estate because it is in my profession. I mean, I studied architecture. But the problem that I have with investing in real estate now is, unless you're going to be in crowdfunding, so like you get a group of friends, right? You invest together and buy a property that you can actually get a return on. Because some of these 1-beds that are built, you can't use them to borrow money. So, and even if you buy a 1-bed, I know one of the slogans that was being used to sell these 1-beds is you'll buy this 1-bed, or rather you can get a mortgage on this 1-bed or this bed sitter, and then you'll get somebody to come in and rent it, and that rent will pay your mortgage. But as we all know, all of us who live in Nairobi, the rent has changed. I mean, now you can go to such affluent neighborhoods, Riverside, Lavington, even Muthaiga, and get rent that's half the price. Whereas 5 years ago, the rent was very lucrative, right? So now imagine if you've already gotten a mortgage for a 1-bed. We all know jobs have been quite scarce. Well, they've been quite scarce now. Who are you going to get now to live in your studio to pay your mortgage? They're not there. That's really, yeah. So, I mean, in the long run, if you have time to wait it out, to wait this season out, yes, investment like real estate is great. But I think I would rather do it in a group. So like real estate investment trusts, where you're not stuck with managing the day-to-days of owning the apartment. You have like a share in an apartment block. To me, if it's somebody young, that's probably where I would look at doing it more. I probably would not go and invest in an apartment by myself. Also, do I even have the means to buy an entire apartment by myself? And I'm not talking about any old bed sitter. I'm saying one for a return, for like investment. It's just not there, yeah. So I would rather go with a group of people Or we all know that green energy now is quite big. I'm not an expert in green energy. I haven't quite researched that area, but it is a sector that's coming up the same way with fintech and those other areas. But real estate, it's wishful thinking, but naturally, even if there was, if our country manufactured something or made bricks of some sort or something, that's where I would invest it more so than just buying a one bed sitter in a large, huge complex. I wouldn't really buy that as an investment.
So much to unpack from that, but there's something you also say in this statement that if you can wait this season out.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Because right now we are in a buyer's market.
Buyer's market.
Globally, yeah. It means everybody's selling. So now's the time this is not the time to sell, because it means you're competing with so many people.
To sell.
Yes. This goes even in London. Right now, I think apartments have depreciated I think it's expected by 15% end of this year. So because everybody's selling, there's no money that's circulating, and it's a global thing. So if you're rich now, yeah, this is a great time to buy properties because you're going to buy it and just wait. But if you're looking to flip something now, no, this is not the time to do that. Nor is it the time to sell your assets. You'd rather hold it for now and wait.
And this is like a crowd or like a peer pressure thing that happens like uniformly, that this is the time people are selling. Let's use the word majority. This is the time majority of people are selling, and it is global and it is almost timed.
I don't think it's timed. I think it's just, if you look at the economy, if
money is not circulating.
Okay. Yeah, we've come out, COVID was 5 years ago,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
So people have used up their savings. And now, where there was a promise that things are going to get better, which they are slowly, people are still struggling. So now you're letting go of assets that you don't need because you need to survive. But if everybody is selling at the same time, that means unless you bought your asset, let's say in let's say the 70s or 80s, then I'm sure whatever you sell it for now, you'll still make a profit, but you'd rather wait. But because everybody's nobody's actually quite liquid. And especially in Kenya, I would say that. So you have assets, but your assets aren't helping you.
Okay.
So now, unless you have extra money, I would buy the real estate, but you'd have to wait. There's no point of buying it now and then looking to sell next year. You'd probably want to buy an asset now and keep it for about minimum 5 years.
Keep it for minimum 5 years.
Yeah, and let it appreciate.
Which means there's a strategy for buying. Because you also say that when people are not liquid, this is the time you are selling the assets you don't need.
Yes, but you're selling it out of desperation. Because you need the money.
How do you position yourself such a way that you don't sell what you have out of desperation?
I mean, I don't know how you'd position yourself, because some of these things are from emergencies. Nobody foresaw COVID coming. So, I mean, you don't see disasters coming,
I
right?
agree. But there's no formula.
But I guess that's now just saving culture. But you can't, everybody, if you can't, first of all, having a property, it costs money to maintain a property, right?
Yeah.
So even when I was telling you that why I don't really like the one beds or the bed sitters is because, yes, they look great now, but what about the maintenance 5 years from now or 10 years from now?
Mm-hmm.
So if let's say the building starts, it's not maintained well, things start falling apart, the paint's not good, you're not going to sell it you're not going to get a good return on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to where you buy and from whom you buy is important. But back to the main question of why people are liquidating now is because they need the money.
They need the money.
Yes.
So we go back. It's accurate to say that money is king. Like, I'd rather have the money than have the asset. I can just work on liquidity purely, because that way I'll never be out of market.
No, but you can't just work on liquidity. What I'm saying is investments are good to have, but the environment, the times that we are in now, it is more challenging to keep your assets if you have a limited pool of money. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. But if you were already wealthy to start off, now is the time to buy. If you've got savings and you're looking to buy a property, now is when you want to buy. But you don't want to buy a property now when you literally are using the last shilling or all that you have. That would not be a smart move, because it's still a risk.
You will sell it soon.
Well, that's if you can sell it. Because we use Kilimani, for example. majority of the apartments there are studios and one beds.
Yes.
So if everybody's selling the same studio and one bed, are you all going to fight for the same buyer?
Whoa.
So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's why you have to sort of think before you're buying the properties. That's why I really think the crowdfunding or like the real estate investment trust, to me, makes more sense if you don't have the space to risk all that money. Yeah, because now it's just like a share. It's like, yeah, you're buying a share. So you're not buying the entire property.
Wow.
Yeah, that's less of a risk.
So, but I'm still now tempted because you say if you're wealthy and you're not worried about like your finances thinning to the extent that you have to sell what you already have. So it means this thing has levels. There's a level at which you're still accumulating, right? You're still accumulating. That if in the event of anything, you may sell and start from scratch again. But then there's a level where, in case of any economic uncertainty, you're still comfortable. You don't have to sell. That means that's what I believe they call a balanced portfolio. You're both liquid and you have assets.
But you see, even if you have being asset rich also can be, I don't want to say useless, it can be cumbersome. Because if you're asset rich, you can't just sell your property like that. I mean, do you know anybody who's just sold their property and off they go with the money? You'd rather have cash. So what I'm saying is, if you've banked, you cannot use your asset to get money immediately unless you're going to a loan shark or those sort of things, right? But to get rid of your property, let me use it like that. So like now, if you check, there's a couple of real estate websites in Nairobi, well, in Kenya, and there's a lot of these, I don't want to call them colonialists, I'll call them British settlers who got land from the Queen in the coast, right? They were all given like 5-acre plots. If you go now and look, a lot of them are selling because they want to leave and go back to England, right? But now so many of them are selling that the price is now, they're having to sell at lower prices because there are many of them who are selling. Whereas the ones who sold way before, let's say even before 2020, were getting great prices, great deals, because they all have beachfront plots. But because now all of them are trying to move and everybody's trying to go back, of course, now the prices are not the same. You're not going to get the same price.
Deal.
Yeah, you're not. The demand, because now there's more options, so you can shop around more.
Something interesting comes up here. I believe if we were to do research on it, you'll find that there's a phenomenon that leads these people who have held these properties for that long to want to sell now, all of them. In this sense, if they were to sell 5 years ago, right, they probably would have gotten a good deal. But there must be something that has happened, and in my head, and this is just from my head, something that has happened that now commonly the people who've held these properties want to sell. One, maybe it's time. Maybe collectively and probably not like as in agreement, they had agreed to actually leave the country after a certain number of years, and now that's the years of, like they've hit those years. Like let's say if they are given land by the Queen, they say they want to be in Kenya for 50 years and then leave, then the 50 years comes together at the same time, then the price drops. So it means, Pia, as much as we say the price of property appreciates, there are a lot of factors that can dip the property. So property at a real estate is not a sure bet. I may have a property worth X value, right?
Yes.
But there's a lot of factors that do not guarantee appreciation. Chances are that it could dip.
No, okay, so in the case of the plots in the coast or the families, the British settlers, it's simply just because I would say that the Africans have become wealthy. Kenyans now have money as well. And they don't have, when they were given the land, they were literally given the land. So a lot of them now no longer have the finances to be able to keep their properties, but also too, they've lost interest in being in Kenya and they just want to go back home. That's really actually why a lot of them are selling the land. So there's not really that the land, the value of the land is still there. It's just that the value was higher because they used to own it before, right? So you want to have your net worth as, it's a higher balance than I guess inflated. Yeah, I guess they sort of fibbed the value of their properties when it suited them. But because now they can't maintain their properties anymore, they just were leaving. And because now they're leaving in more of a rush, they're trying to leave the country rushed. They're rushing out of the country. So they want to get whatever money they can get to leave. Some of them was purely because they got sick. So now they want to go back and get treatment in England. Some of them are just tired of being here. So they're leaving. And this goes the same as well for like Naivasha area. Notoriously where they all are. Nyanyuki still has a lot of them, which is fine. But, again, this is not land that they were necessarily, that they actually paid for. Okay. It was given, it was free land, sort of. Okay. Yeah, so that's why they're doing that.
I'm guessing here, but I suspect you have done research on market trends in real estate.
Yes, I do, but depends from which side you're talking about.
From the point where you mentioned something, you buy a property and then you wait for 5 years for it to appreciate. Is there a set time for which a property in real estate adds value to the value you bought it at?
No, I feel like that's a difficult question. I think the easier question that I would say is, before you invest in real estate, would be to do your research. So the assets that are built near schools, hospitals, good roads, those assets are going to appreciate in value.
Given.
Yeah, they should. They will. Because of just what is near their vicinity. But all governments have plans for roads. So if you have access to that information, you can see where the road expansions are going. If a road expansion happens near your property, of course your value goes up. If you're in Nairobi, for example, if you happen to have property, I think we discussed how the UN advised their staff to live in blue zones, right? If you have property in the blue zone areas, your value has appreciated. So it's really about amenities and how close you are to amenities. There's also the safety of your property, the safety of your area also adds value. Not necessarily just because the developer is a good developer. It's really the location of where you are.
I'm curious. This sounds like feasibility studies.
Yes.
But before we get to that, tell us about the blue zones.
So the blue zone is an area that basically the UN and the American embassies have deemed as safe areas for their people to live. And this is usually the areas of Runda, Muthaiga, Riverside Drive, some areas of Lavington, and Kilimani, a very small portion of it, but not a lot, which is why you see majority of where like the expats live, they are in certain areas.
Yes.
And those areas, it's literally in the blue zone. If you live outside of the blue zone, what they're saying is those areas are not safe or are less safe. Yeah.
This is something that has specifically been done.
Yes. I don't know where I can find you the map, but it's actually called the blue zone.
When you stumble upon this information, how far back does it date? Like, I'm interested in, like, not necessarily the year, like the exact time. Is it post-independence? Like they draw a map and they say you can live around this specific area? And
I wouldn't say exactly post-independence, but what I do know is that before, when obviously Kenya was colonized.
Yes.
And I don't want to make this I don't want to be so controversial here.
No,
but
speak your mind.
When people had pass books, when Kikuyus had pass books.
Yes.
You had to show your books, similar to apartheid.
Yes.
That's why we have neighborhoods. If you look at our neighborhoods, Lavington, Riverside, Muthaiga, when you're in the neighborhoods, you can't see the poverty, right? Because they're designed like that, neighborhoods. So already we had a zoning, we've already had a history of zoning.
Yes.
Before even UN and Americans came in, just during the British side, right? We already had zoning with those neighborhoods.
Yes.
And at certain times you found, I'm not sure about the other tribes, how they were, but I know a lot of Kikuyu people could not enter certain neighborhoods without their passbook and at certain times. Now, we come to the whole UN section bit. The UN, if you see like where Village Market is, where they put their certain houses are, they then also chose an area that they deemed as safe. And so that's why your rental rates in those areas are higher. So somebody who's renting an apartment on Riverside, let's say they're paying 250. As soon as you just move to Kileleshwa, same style house, your rent, that rent there could be like 150. So they use the blue zone also to increase rental. And I'm not sure how they came up with the zone, with the blue zone areas, but a really easy way to tell is if you can find embassies, like European embassies or in those areas, they're more likely blue zones. But do you know any European embassies in Kilimani?
Very strategic.
If you think about it, yeah. Do you know any embassies in Pika? No, if you just think about it, like if you look for the European embassies, they're in the blue zones.
Wow.
And then the heart of the blue zone, obviously, the American embassy right near the UN. I think the only one that sort of is not in a residential area would be the British High Commission, but still it's in Upper Hill, which is a very
affluent.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. So I saw someone complaining about Juba in South Sudan. Ati Juba does not have a plan.
Yes.
Like you can find a mansion next to a Mabati house.
Yes.
Like they don't they don't have that thing. Like the zoning.
Yes.
Let's call it zoning, right? Is it important to do that zoning?
I think it is, and I think Juba is similar to Uganda as well. Uganda has the same problem. You know, you have a mansion on one side, then the next person is an old lady who's been living there for I don't know how long. She got the land from her parents. But again, I think that comes because countries like Uganda, I'm not sure about Sudan's history, but countries like Uganda were protectorates. They weren't colonized. Kenya was a colony. So it was like a mini British. So everything, even how the cities planned here is to favor that, right? So in Uganda, it's not. It wasn't set up like that. Is it important to have zoning? Yes, it is. I mean, maybe, I think Kenyans don't realize how lucky they are that we have sidewalks here. We have roads. Many African countries, there are no sidewalks. The roads aren't that great. The zoning is not really there. You know, you have industrial areas near schools, which is dangerous also just from a health aspect and also just how the city works. Of course, zoning is important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This zoning conversation, when you say, like, I've read that in some books about the need for a passbook. In fact, someone actually posted that on social media using like a pass that you needed to travel to Nairobi back then. And I think I would like, and I believe our audience will bring this up, like whether that's how we find the design of settlements in Nairobi, where we have Muthaiga and then Mathare is just there, like the separation, like you guys.
Yes. I think, look, Kenya is very classist, I'll put it like that. But it's also because the neighborhoods, when you're in those neighborhoods, honestly, you don't actually see what's going on the other side, right? Until we have violence or some of these, you know, riots and those things. I mean, I think even you can see on the southern bypass on the way to Karen, I believe there's a section that everybody's so scared about because it's so dangerous and they're thugs and stuff, right? Well, thugs, so they say. But again, because we go into neighborhoods, So is it something that can, I don't know if it can change, but the thing is, it's on purpose, I guess, to not to control people, but I guess to make it comfortable for the people at the top.
To make it comfortable for the people at the top. Okay.
That's how it is for. I think I would put it like that. But also, I think it's also easier to govern the society.
Easier to govern the society when?
Yeah, because then obviously you give good amenities and, like, you know, like, okay, if you have, okay, like the electricity, for example, if you're cutting out, if you're rationing power, are you going to ration it in your nice areas, in your good neighborhoods? Exactly. So that's why zoning is good, if for that purpose, for control. It's like a way of control. There's a famous architect called Le Corbusier, and he used to design social housing for people based on like class and like what they were doing for work.
What does that mean? Like designing social houses?
Like designing where you place people. So like having like a business district area, having a housing residential area, having like just segregating, which is essentially what this is as well. Yeah.
And what that is meant to achieve is like control, as you said?
Control, some people claim it could be organization.
Okay.
Depends on how you want to look at it. Yeah.
Okay. So before we went into the zoning thing, I found it interesting actually, even when you mentioned it the first time. Feasibility studies.
Yes.
For someone who does not understand that,
Yeah.
beyond geography and discovery of rocks, what is feasibility studies in real estate?
Feasibility studies, think of it like research or like doing your due diligence. So maybe 10 years ago, Nairobi wasn't very developed, right? And you could build just about anything. So a mall, apartment, whatever, it didn't matter. Somebody would take it up, there would be somebody to occupy it. But now Nairobi's reached a place where we have so many, we've developed a lot, and now you have to develop strategically. So rather than just putting up whatever you feel like putting up on any piece of land, you should sort of do a study and see, am I going to put up a hospital here? And the reasoning would be, oh yeah, because this area has a school, it's got lots of families living here, and there's no hospital here. So you put up a hospital. Or a mistake could be somebody what I see a lot with developers, sometimes they hold on to an idea, like they want to put up apartments. But then where they want to put up the apartment, their neighbors, there are already so many apartments there, but they put it up anyway. And then they end up making a loss. So the benefit of feasibility studies, number one, is for that. Two, it's to also see what profits you can make in 5 years, 10 years. It's basically just planning rather than just going with the flow, which is what we used to do. And unfortunately, with Kenya, we still like to do that. We still like to build with going with the flow and seeing how it goes. But the consequences of going with the flow and just building what you want is either you end up with a project that stalls, or you end up not finding buyers to take up your project, or you end up going bankrupt, some people, because the bank now takes your project, or you just lose it completely.
So the problem is not necessarily high interest rates that gets people losing their property. It's the lack of feasibility studies.
To an extent, yes, for the urban areas.
Okay.
Because it's like making an informed decision. Let me put it like that. So it's knowing actually what you're doing, and it's actually checking to see, do you need to build something? Can you make it? Feasibility studies can also tell you, now is not the time. Like I think we just told you that if it's like a buyer's market. So now a feasibility study could just tell you, I know you want to develop this, but develop in 5 years when there's more possibility of selling. Because now there's no point of you, your neighbor, and your neighbor's neighbor developing at the same time, the same model or the same item.
The rules of economy apply everywhere. Supply and demand,
yes.
Standard everywhere.
Yes.
So if people decide to sell when you're selling, as in, if you have a house you're selling and you are selling it alone, just before you get a customer, other people join the market.
Yes. I think there was a bubble. When did the bubble burst? I think it was
2008.
Yeah, there was a real estate bubble. There was a time when you could build anything under the sun and you were like a millionaire, like you made money.
No, that
there was one that was that time.
Yeah, that was 2008. But I think that was from the little information I've gathered, was finance guys gamed the system. Like the strategies they used to lend money was in such a way that it was impossible for the people who, like the lenders, it was impossible for the lenders to pay back that money. And they gamed the system because there was their benefits they were getting by advancing those loans. So they capitalized on the benefits they were getting on the back end without caring about the lender's ability to pay till it caught up with them.
Yes, but also we didn't have enough. There wasn't much in the market. See, okay, when you look at apartments now, when you want to buy apartments, right? Unless you can turn off the lights by clapping your hands, or there's automatic curtains, there's so much competition now. Whereas before, not even that long ago, just 10 years ago, just a basic apartment and you could sell, right?
Yes.
Now people need fancy kitchens, you need nice flooring, the competition is there, it's a lot more. That's why I'm saying the need to do a study as to who you're selling to, why you're selling it, the pricing is so important now, because you can end up stuck with a project that's not going to go anywhere.
And now that everyone talks about, and I'll remember to ask how to go about feasibility studies, but now that everyone's talking about, most people do all forms of other businesses, with a target of branching out to real estate because of the assumption that it's safer, it's the sure bet, it's the best form of business to be in, right? When you talk like this, competition, when you talk about, competition in general, is there a future in real estate then?
Yes, always, because we have to live. I mean, okay, Africa alone, what, 70% of the population is under the age of 35, I think, somewhere there. So we have to live somewhere. Real estate is...
So we will live in the houses that have not been occupied when we still don't have money as Africans. So when we get money, we live in the oversupply.
We need to live somewhere.
Then someone...
And real estate is still going to be a viable place to invest. The thing that's going to be important is where are you investing? Which project? Which company is it that's doing the investment? Who's doing the project? I mean, not every single development has the same value. So you can't compare a random developer to like Tattoo City. You see what I mean? So if you're looking at the property, like Tattoo City, looking at like how is it laid out? What's the future? What's the projection? What are they saying that is going to be there? That's how you invest. Not necessarily just because, your neighbor is building.
Landlord,
yeah,
yes.
No. So you're looking at where you're investing and why. And that's where I'm saying feasibility studies. That's where the research comes in.
Then what's the reality of starting small? Based on the market, we know the majority of the Kenyan market is low-income earners, right?
Yes.
And targeting the low-income earners does not require you to have 50 million, right?
Yes.
Is that a path you can advise someone to capitalize on and say provide housing for?
That's why I go back and I say personally, I favor real estate investment trusts, just because again, I'm investing in a group, right, for shares. That is me personally. I would want a definition on what do you mean by starting small?
Starting small is, I will not target to buy an apartment in Kilimani because I can use that to go target teachers in a remote part of the country and build simple houses, single rooms for them, bed sitters for them at the cost of an apartment in Kilimani.
I would still do a study, and because you'd still put in your construction costs, you'd put in your land costs, and if you do a feasibility study or highest best use, you're basically trying to figure out and see what's the budget that you need. But additionally, when you have a study that's done properly, you can then take that to a bank or to wherever financial institution you're going to go to and use that document to basically explain why you need the money to build what you're doing. Because now you're going to a developer. Now you're no longer investing. What you're saying is, here you are buying a property, right, an apartment. This other alternative you've given me is you're going to now go and develop for teachers in a rural area, correct? So now you're a developer. Those are two different things.
Wow.
Because here you're investing, but you're buying the property, right? But there you're going to put up
a development.
Yes. But you'd have to study what income those teachers have, moving the materials there, what the cost of construction there. I mean, there's a lot of factors you'd have to put in rather than just going there. Because how do you know what the studio apartment costs in Nairobi is what it costs to build the houses there for the teachers?
Are you saying that feasibility studies to some extent is a qualification to get money?
Yes, to some extent. Many big developers will use feasibility studies it's like giving a reason as to why your development should happen. And what you're doing is you've ran the numbers and you've gotten advice from professionals where this is their job, right? And so you're proving to the bank why you're doing something. But it's also a safer bet. You'd rather do a feasibility study, spend money on that, than going to build an entire whole new project and then just figuring out and see if it's going to sell. That's what I'm saying. So before in Nairobi, you didn't need studies to build anything because there was nothing anyway. There were not enough buildings. But now, because everybody's building, there's more access to financing now. We have international players now in the country. Of course, you have to be more careful about what you're building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there a strategy for Kenyans to say, for example, if you're a brilliant mind, is accessing the cheap money an option? Like locally,
you could do JVs, joint ventures, which is where, let's say I own a piece of land in a good area, or it doesn't matter, whichever area, I can approach a foreign company, and there are quite a few that are here, and tell them basically you put up your land and then they put up the construction costs, and then you can come to an agreement where either they pay you with like apartments or some housing on it. And then that's the safest way, if you ask me, because you're not dealing with the headache of construction, because you're not a contractor. So all you've done is put up the land.
That has been said on this show before by our guest Abdinur Ali Mahdi, one of our most interesting episodes, especially in real estate. The thing that we did not get there beyond, it was a discussion about the Somali model. You're saying that there are international organizations here that are open to funding such projects, as in, if you do a feasibility study, say for example, you do the whole thing as a proposal, this is an option out of the traditional finance system.
Yeah, so depends. Some JVs, so some international companies have their own system of feasibility studies, right? Many times they will tell you, they'll usually specify an area that they're looking for, right? Now, they're not exactly investing because you're partners, because you've put up the land and they're coming with their construction team. Now, the ease here is they deal with all the professionals, right? So getting the architects, engineers, QSs, all of that stuff, the lawyers. What you've done is you've bought your land, you've bought your title. So you're partners like that. And then you can agree, so the value of my land, if your value is, let's say your land is worth 10 million, you'll say, give me back apartments or whatever it is worth of 10 million. So you get to keep something on that piece of land. For sentimental value, I like that model, just because I think if you get a piece of land or something from your family and you don't want to lose it completely, you can sort of keep a section of it. But with that said, not every single person that goes to seek JVs gets it. I will not lie, they're more biased to have people who have land in, like, Kilimani, in more higher end neighborhoods, right? Because of just the return, exactly. But I think that will change. The more saturated Nairobi is getting, the more we have to look outside. So I mean, areas for sure now, like Machakos areas, are going to go traction, Naivasha. What probably will add to the value or to the ease of you getting a JV will be access to roads. So is your property have good access to roads?
And this is only in real estate. I believe, no, we can discuss other businesses later. So in terms of, in terms of the information you've been exposed to, right? What do you think is the best way that the African can change access to wealth?
That the African can change access to wealth.
In this sense, right? We agree that real estate is a sure bet, right?
Yes.
Then the barrier for entry is land, and it's a capital intensive sector.
Yes.
Right? But it keeps you safe to some extent, like to have invested in the sector, right? But it's not for everybody.
I think it's not for everybody because we have other problems that we're dealing with. And I know that I'm going away from the topic of real estate.
It's okay.
But I think because we have other pressing problems, and I mean, let me say this generally, one of my favorite things that I like doing in my pastime, if I'm in an Uber and somebody's around my age or like millennials bit, right? I'll always ask and say, do you own a house? And the usual answer I get is no, I pay rent. Then I'll ask, why is it? They say, oh, I can't afford it, right? So real estate investment is for everybody. But the thing is, majority of the youth right now are dealing with other problems in real estate, where you haven't even reached the luxury of your problem is acquiring real estate. Right now, majority of the young people, and I'm speaking for young people because I guess that's where I fall, is you're just trying to first get a job. I mean, right now, just the unemployment in itself is ridiculously high. So you can't have people who, majority of the youth are unemployed, and then we're telling them about real estate. It's a far-fetched, I mean, it's like a dream.
Somehow, I fall on different sides of that conversation. Unemployment, I read a book that was published in 1969.
Okay.
And the same problems people had of unemployment are the same problems people have today. So there's a sort of like a template of problems that has been there, carried over ages and generations. So I think the conversation should be, this is probably the template of society. There will always be poor people. There will always be people who make money, right? Do you think it's okay to just settle in, we have other problems? People had other problems.
No, I think it's a lot harder now than it was then. I think then, or long ago, there's a notion of if you work hard, okay, let's not even forget work hard. If you go to school and get a degree, you're almost assured a job, right? Of some sort.
Yes.
Now you have so many people who are either Uber drivers and they've got ridiculous degrees, engineers, QSs.
That's true, yes.
Incredibly clever people, but they're stuck doing Uber. When you ask them why they're doing Uber, oh, they can't make ends meet. The ones that are, I would say, that are even more fortunate, you find they have two jobs, right? So they do Uber after their desk job, and then they have their professional job. So I don't think that I would say that we have the same problem. I just think that cost of living, number one, is high, but also if you look at like our salary scales, we haven't changed it in Kenya. Like what, if you see like what lawyers earn when they're pupils, or like even architects, and it's not a lot of money, but yet the cost of living is high, and yet even to purchase houses is high. Then also the cost of land has increased. So everything else has increased, and then also we're so much more, we're very many, so the competition is more, but the landscape isn't changing.
We are so many. Where are we coming from? We are so many. Where are we coming from? People nowadays have 1 or 2 children. Where are we coming from? In fact, we should have an undersupply of people.
No, and I think that's a problem that we're going to have later. Because you see, like now, look, was it Asia, they used to have a large population. I think as of 2020, as of 2020, I believe in China, the average age was 39. India, I think, was 29. Africa was 19, and it's getting younger. So I believe even by 2050, over 40% of the young population will come from Africa.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not that we're coming from anywhere, it's just we are the youngest continent. So
we are the youngest continent.
Yes. So of course our competition is more. So I think it's unfair to use the older generation and say that they were able to get certain things. They weren't as many as us. They weren't competing. The competition wasn't that stiff. Now, with every young person, everybody has an undergraduate degree, everybody has a master's. It's very difficult. You're competing.
So will it help for people to stop making children so that other people can grow fast and get
There's
opportunities?
So much space. No, why? It's also our superpower.
Being the youngest generation is a superpower.
Yes, it can be, but it can also be our downfall. Because think about it, young people have energy, we've got strength, we've got the youth. Yeah, we have energy, we have strength, right? We have the numbers. If we don't focus on the young people and give them skills, or rather listen to them, well, that could also be chaotic for us. I mean, we've seen it already in Africa. Yeah, you have little spurs of, people getting dissettled, they're unhappy, people are jobless. So it can also work well for us, because that means the rest of the world, they're much older than us, which means eventually we will be the majority.
Okay.
And I think that's really what the fear is of, I want to say, the West. And maybe that's also why there's a lot of trying to take our young people or our minds abroad. I mean, it's because they can't fill those quotas.
So would it be another perspective to then say that the idea of wealth has changed? For example, someone could have, like you say, Gen Z's own phones, millennials own cars.
Max,
right?
Yeah.
Most, like these generalizations, right? But you'll find a Gen Z with a phone that makes more money than a millennial who owns land. Would you say that wealth has changed?
Yes. But I think where I get very worried with social media platforms giving us wealth is, we saw it in America when TikTok was just banned, right? Okay. So what does that mean? If my whole life is on my phone, is on my social media, And let's just say tomorrow my government policies, let's say my government doesn't agree to Instagram rules and regulations or TikTok. What happens? So now my livelihood has gone, my entire being, my entire worth is gone.
That applies to all asset classes, because you may own a piece of land, you may own a house, then due to political instability, you have to flee your country. That has happened in South Sudan, it has happened in different countries, right?
Okay.
So it's the same concept.
But I think the risk is less. The chances of a platform disappearing is a lot more than an asset disappearing. And then when we go to assets, that's exactly why I go back and I say, a one bed, like a bed sitter property, to me is not more valuable than land, than actual land. Actual land where you can actually grow something, you can actually step on it and see it, the value is there, right? You can add value to it. How you add value to a one bed, I don't know. If you purchase a one bed, how do you add value to it? I mean, hey, maybe I can be corrected, but I personally, I've battled with this a long time. Land, physical land, I can see how you can add value, right? You can build up, you can put apartments, you can grow food, you can do something with it. A one bed sitter, I don't see how you add value to it. So I purchase it, okay. How do I add value to it?
Okay.
I don't see how you add value to it. So the same thing with the social media. I've been talking about Instagram and TikTok. I mean, I do have social media accounts, but I'm very happy that I don't completely rely on it to speak for me. But we do have a lot of young people where literally you're using your social media platform to justify why you should be paid a certain amount. So if that disappears now, what do you do? I mean, I think you know this. When we have content creators,
influencers,
yes, you say, I have so many followers. Yeah. Now, what if that platform disappears?
Then what does that do to the conversation that the future is digital?
What do you mean?
Like our world is now going this direction, like online and everything, e-commerce and stuff. We have people who, yes, it would make sense to have a shop. We have people who build chains of supermarkets, but we also have people who build e-commerce platforms and their business is fully on the platform. Yes, I'm cognizant to the idea of like, it's temporary, it's not tangible, right? But so you make hay while the sun shines.
I think there's two bits there. I think e-commerce is different. I think if I'm selling something on a platform, right? So I'm selling glasses on TikTok. I think that's very different from if I'm creating content. Because if I'm creating content, I'm not selling an item, right?
But you're making more money than someone, in some cases, more money than someone who has a flat.
Yeah, but your value, I'm saying, no, I'm going back to your example of saying, the difference.
The future is digital.
Is here you're selling an item. It's just you've used this media platform to showcase your item, right? Whereas if you're a content creator, purely a content creator, right? You're using the app and it's yourself, right? It's yourself, your videos, your posts. There's nothing physical. Am I making sense?
You're making sense, but if you're selling glasses without that e-commerce platform,
yes,
you will stay in your shop the whole day.
Yes, but you can go to another one.
Yourself.
Yeah, but you can go to another one. My point for content creators is, can you transfer the followers that you got from this one that has shut down to a new one?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
You can.
How?
And not to defend anti-content creators. I'm just looking for a deeper understanding
I'm curious
in how wealth has changed, right? We have people who have like, you get as in uncertainty happens, you're off one platform, but you're also big on one platform, and the same formula that you used is the same criteria for wealth.
Yes.
Like we have people who can be wiped out in terms of wealth, but they have the formula to build that again elsewhere, right? We're talking tangible assets.
Yes.
The same way, say on social media, we have people who, like, if you have the formula to survive in that system, right, you can build it up again. So that's the balance of
No, I'm agreeing you can build it up again. The same way how we say, if they say your brain is so, if you've made money once, you can make it again, right? Because money comes and goes. I get that. I get that concept. I'm just saying it's a bit, I don't think if we had access to more assets like real estate, if it was more easily accessible, I don't think social media platforms would be this successful.
If we had?
If it was easier for us to get traditional assets of investment, right?
Yes.
Like if we could invest in apartments, land, normally, let's say with favorable terms, right? I don't think TikToks and Instagrams would be this successful.
Oh, so this is like a shortcut.
I don't think it's a shortcut. I just think it's where we are today. It's like you mentioned e-commerce. Remember, traditionally, before you'd like to have a small shop, right?
Yes.
But now to own a small shop, how much is the rent? So that is how e-commerce has become popular, right?
Yes.
So I think as some of these traditional assets phase out, or rather they become less accessible to us, the more popular these other ones come in. So like, the newer assets, like, content creation, e-commerce, and social media, that's how those people that's how they become popular versus this one.
But this also changes, and it also has an effect in real estate.
Yes.
Assuming this is the world we are living in, assuming
Yes.
this is the future. Say e-commerce. Let me give an example with e-commerce. You don't need a shop
Yes.
to actually set up a platform to sell your products, right? Nowadays, you can work remotely. That means reduced need for office space, right? Over time, if this is sustained for a certain period, right? Isn't this a likelihood to wipe out real estate if it becomes stable?
No, how?
If I was to set up an organization that I don't need to set up a physical office space,
Yes.
right? That reduces the market that real estate developers will target.
No, but then it just changes, like how we have co-working spaces.
Understood.
Yeah, we don't change. You still need an office, but now what you don't need is a whole floor by yourself.
Exactly. So co-working spaces also reduces, because let's say like Wojo, Wojo is a co-working space
Yes.
that has different organizations.
Yes.
So you don't need to go set up a whole organization by yourself,
Yes.
right? That means for the developers, that changes the game.
Yes, but it already is there because we have mixed-use developments, which is why they always try, like co-working. There's like co-living concepts on Riverside Drive. There's you can see they have shops now. You have like the bottom floor is retail, then you have apartments.
Okay.
Which is the same concept as co-working.
Oh, so this means as times change, you also adapt to the times.
Yes, you will always need real estate. It just may not look how it used to look traditionally. So before, maybe the dream was you have a village home, right? Now maybe it'll change and amend because the space is not there or the trend has changed. Exactly what you just said. So offices, before your dream was to have a whole office. Now you have big conglomerates in co-working spaces because there's no need anymore to have a whole office because people are also working at home. So it's not that real estate is going to disappear. It's just it's going to change.
Okay.
And if we already look at it, I believe Meta already even has real estate in the internet, so to say. Yeah, so it's just changing. That's all. Yeah.
One of the ways you've given to access capital and wealth creation is it's real estate investment trusts, right? Collaborate with people, put together money, and people tend to agree with that. And
Yes.
some people feel that that's what actually works for the Somali community. So now...
Oh, is that what they said? That's how they...
They pull resources. And even away from the Somali community, we've had a conversation with representatives or a friend of mine who works for a company that put together like 30 people. It's called Epic Brownstone Developments. They came together, a group of 30 people, and started contributing 30,000 each. That's almost $1 million bob every month. Then over 1 year, they were able to actually... They were in a negotiating position because that's almost 12 million in a year, right? So 10 million, it's 10 to 12 million, let's say, in a year, right? And that's around the average amount of money you need to buy land in a prime location. Okay. And it gives you the negotiating power because if you guys can raise 10 to 12 million in a year, it means you could actually pay for a prime piece of land going for 40 million in 4 years and pay it up without borrowing, right? And the concept is working for them.
I mean, that's not new. Isn't that what chamas are? The novelty is not new. I just think maybe our group didn't really get into it. But that's really, honestly, the best way to enter the real estate market properly because then you're actually entering with a decent foothold because you're coming in together. I mean, there's strength in numbers.
So you're again confirming that going it alone.
No, I don't think you can go it alone. That's fine by all means. But if you're looking to make a proper investment and make a return, I would go in with a group. And then probably if you went into a decent group like the one you've just mentioned, after you've done one, I'm sure you'd have made enough of a return to be able to go on your own if you wanted to. And I think people use it as a stepping stone. I think it's a better way to enter. And then the next step would be now to go on by yourself and get a better property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sawa. So now we got into it, like we got into a conversation on depopulation. And I was very interested in your ideas of what depopulation really is in the most basic form.
I mean, I don't want to be short. No, I'm just saying because, everybody, can't go against the population. But I really do believe that this concept of bed sitters and one beds is ultimately going to destroy the family life, or rather reduce our population. I don't think it is in the West's interest at all to have Africa have a large population. And I actually think encouraging us, especially the young people, to enter one beds and bed sitters already just diminishes the idea of having a family. So I would, if it was me, if I was designing the one beds, I would probably design a modular place that could sort of shift, right? So if an apartment block, let's say you've got like one beds, I would probably design one beds that can become 2 beds or 3 beds, can be adaptable. So it can be functional. Depopulation, I think it is because we're just isolating people.
Before you even proceed, let me just go back about. Mention Juja without mentioning Juja. You're saying bedsitters are an enemy of families, like projectively.
Yes. Why am I saying that?
I'm curious. I'm invested.
Because how can you have a whole family in a one bed? We go back to the argument of people who are living in one beds, What's their age roughly?
It's nothing to do with the needs at a certain time. It has nothing to do with it's cheaper to develop, decent, and you can live there at a certain stage of your life. But if you wanna move to have a family, you can upgrade to a 1 bed or a 2 bed, depending on how fast you're supplying children.
Okay, that's fine. And that's what you're saying is people are squeezing into 1 beds, right? And 2 beds with their families,
Yes.
Isn't that still not encouraging them not to have a family? I mean, I'm sorry, for myself personally, I don't think I'd want to live in a 1 bed and I've got like 3 kids there. And
I've never thought of it like that. Like, we, as Africans, we shamelessly have children even in a cube.
I think that's changing. I think that's changing now.
Yes?
No, I think that's changing now. I don't think it's the same narrative at all. I actually think even the reason why people are taking so much longer to have children or to settle down is because you're actually it's not feasible. Or rather, it's not feasible. It's been made not feasible. Am I making sense? Because you're literally putting people in a box. Think about it. You're putting people in a box and you're saying, here's your box, right? Here's where you can move.
But they have studio apartments even in the US. Is that
okay?
That's not like they're targeting Africa or something?
What do you mean targeting Africa?
As in, like, depopulation. If it's not in someone's best interest for Africa to have children, oh Lord, I think if children Africans are unhinderable.
What do you mean? If it's not okay. I don't, depending on who it is for.
It's an interesting concept, actually. Yes.
Truthfully, they don't actually want the population to grow. There's always a whole conversation about population. The population is too high. We need to reduce the population. That's not true. I think even if you see in Uganda, the president has even said many times that there's enough land, keep having more children. There's strength in numbers, right?
Yes.
Now, I do not see how having 1 beds and bed sitters is promoting anything to have family life. It's not promoting it at all. And also you don't see, if really we were talking about promoting families and making life better for families, maybe there would be parks included in some of these developments. There are barely any parks. Now, there was a time when children, like maybe I'd say our group, you could go outside and play. children used to go on walks on the street, right? On prams or just anywhere, or just you were outside. Now you find children are stuck in little boxes, right, of apartments in these high-rise buildings. I mean, is that really an environment that makes a woman want to have another child or makes people want to have a family?
You know why?
Even just your mental psyche is off. You're in a box, a concrete box.
You know why there's a lot of truth in what you're saying? You know why there's a lot of truth in what you're saying? We had a guest on the show, author Bira Remy. He has a book called New Confident Africa. And he has a chapter dedicated on how architecture was used to break the African family.
Yes.
And for him, his explanation is the structure of the homestead.
Yes.
Right? And he explains it from a point of, in a traditional African society, there was like the homestead, the head or the patriarch had their own house. And then from there,
wives,
if he had wives, they each had their own houses. And to get dosed with the baby's injection, they would visit the homestead to get children. And as in, the father, mother, and children were not in the same house. The mother was sleeping in the main man's house on need basis, reproduction stuff. So then, when colonialism comes, they now change the system to now you move into urban areas, and then the design where. In fact, in the traditional homestead, the kitchen was even separate. Where now we have a house that has a kitchen and all the amenities here. And now the father, mother, and children are sleeping with the children in the same house. And this now destabilizes even, he even goes to the extent of breaking it down to respect in families. So we have been in that system for so long that we have normalized it, such that until you mention it, I don't think of a bedsitter as a hindrance to growing a family.
But you see, I think, I feel like architecture also touches on many. What you've said, I'm sorry, my mind is going crazy because there's a lot of comments a lot of things you've thrown there.
Yeah.
But number one, if we go back to like the bedsitter, for example, I know you're a man. I'm not sure if you're aware of like postpartum depression, right? In this setup that you've just described there, right? Whoever, let's say a woman, if she's depressed or something that has postpartum, she has help, right? So she's not alone. In the context that we have now of the urban Nairobi in these bedsitters, you're basically alone, right? So the mental issues have increased. The children you don't have help, so you're isolated. So when you're isolated, how does that promote the growth of the population of the family? Because you're unhappy.
Yeah.
So in this setting, what you're saying is that responsibilities are shared, or rather you're able to talk to somebody or you're able to share your problems. That's really where the benefit comes of living in a community. That's not what's happening now. I mean, now every time you open the news, you hear, a 3-year-old was being abused by, I don't know, which maid or something, because both the parents were working or both the parents left. I mean, those were things that were not really happening long ago. They did. I'm not saying that they didn't, but it was less likely.
Yeah.
But now it's prevalent because, again, what you've just described, they've changed how we live, how we socialize with each other, and how we go day to day. There's a reason why grandparents are there. They're more patient. So, in this setting, let's say, for example, if you live like how Indians live, right?
Yeah.
Grandparents, parents, and the grandchildren. The parents are able to go work, then the grandparents can watch the children. But we don't have that now. And you see, in that setting, it promotes having a family because you're like, oh, it's not so difficult. I can make it. I can manage. So even as a family, you're like, I think I can have more because I have help. But why would you want to add if you know you have no help?
Wow.
Which then also increases, this is off, but it then increases abortion rates. And then again, are the abortion rates actually safe? No. I know personally I'm pro-life, but even just that in itself I feel like that exasperates the choices of having abortions. Living in a bad environment already messes up with your mental psyche. Whether it's just going to school, I think we discussed this many times. Another example would be children that live in the slum areas, right? Even if we have free education, if you go to sleep at night and you're being rained on all night, and then you don't have food in the morning, then you're going to school that's free education. I mean, what are you going to learn? Like, you're tired, you're sleepy, you're sick, right? So again, that comes down to your living environment, where you're living. So that's why, I mean, personally, right now, I'm very much a fan of Burkina Faso. Their method in fixing their country has been to first fix the foundation. And for them, they have identified the foundation as housing for everybody. So basically, once people are in good housing, and that can mean many things, like you just said, the surrounding, the typology, the space, then every other issue can sort of be sorted out.
Okay.
So from health to the well-being of the children, the well-being of women, everything sort of fixes that, including security as well.
Now, I believe my next in my lineup for things I need to research on is whether the results of, let's say, the effect of the change of architecture is an effect of urbanization, right? Or it is a conspiracy design, right? From the start, someone who designs a strategy knowing that after a certain period, this will be the outcome, or it's a result of unintended consequences. So now that's an area I'll have to go research on, because it's still on the same platform. I interact with the concept of racial anthropologists, like people who, racial anthropologists, and again, the same guest, Bira Remy, takes us back to there's a guy, Darwin.
Yes.
Darwin was specifically funded to do research to prove that...
is this Survival of the Fittest, the gentleman who writes? Which Darwin is this you're talking about?
Charles Darwin, yes.
Yes,
He was funded to go do research, and to go do research that proves that the white race is superior to the other races.
Okay.
And they actually come with a race hierarchy.
Yes.
And this, by design, goes into how people are treated, and the white supremacy thing later on, right? So my interaction with these concepts takes me to, are these unintended consequences of things people did, or it's a deliberate effort?
With architecture specifically.
Yes, especially with architecture.
I mean, architecture has been known to be used to, especially in politics. When you look at Mussolini in Italy, even with Hitler, he used architecture to influence his population, to influence Germany. If you look at a lot of government buildings, or even just like courts, and courts would be a good example here. They're built to make you feel a certain way. So some buildings, you enter and you feel small, and it's on purpose. Even when you go inside a courtroom, the judge is up for a reason. There's a way of authority. Of course, your built environment impacts how you are and how you feel, which is why I'm saying, again, one of the downfalls that I find the most about some of these one beds or all these high-rise buildings is, what's the vibe that you're giving inside? What's the emotion you're evoking? It's your environment plays a lot on your psyche and how you are. So there are places you will enter. There's a way a bank is set up to make you feel. Even colors. Everything has a reason. Airports have a reason as well. There's a reason why things are designed the way they're designed. But the most prominent ones, I would say, and you can read this and Google this very quickly, is Hitler definitely used architecture. He used architecture. Even Mussolini with his fascist movements, they use architecture. It is a way that has been used to control people.
Architecture?
It's always been there. Yeah.
Architecture and politics.
It's always been there.
Guy.
But it's not it can also be used for positive as well.
Wow, it's actually a thing.
Yes.
The subtle message of buildings. First page, actually, to shape. Oh, Lord. Goes beyond construction, serves as a powerful political medium, and it tells a story of our past, reflects our present, and expresses our aspirations. So for those of us who looked at things simplistically, from a simplistic point of view, like from an aerial view, there are buildings that look like a Freemason, nini.
Okay, I don't want to get into the Freemason ones, but...
No, it's a thing. Don't get into it, but it's a thing.
Yes, Masons, they work with stone. They definitely have architecture that is clearly, you can see, that's where it's derived from.
International airports are a prime example of how...
There's even buildings that can guide you in a certain direction. You walk into a building and you think you're going there because you're choosing it. No, you've been guided there.
It's manipulation.
Not manipulation, it's suggested. It's like leading lines. Okay, it's like in architecture, you'll find men tend to like very straight lines, geometric shapes. Even for furniture, women tend to like more curved shapes because it's just appealing to them. So you just sort of guide people in how they need to go. That's what buildings are for.
There are people who just don't design based on beauty, that I love this. It goes beyond because you want people to behave a certain way.
Yes. It can. And the same way how you can evoke happiness and peace. If you can evoke happiness and you can improve people's mood with what you build. So you see, like, there's some of these like council flats in England, right? They look very dreary and, they look sad because they're sort of, that's the emotion that they've given them. You don't exactly want people to be very happy there. Yeah, it's like a prison. I mean, even some of these buildings we have here that we're calling affordable housing, they look like prisons. Even prisons have a reason as to how they're built.
So the government is investing in poor mental health.
Well, they should take it more seriously, yeah. I mean, I literally just said that with the bed sitters. If like during COVID, when people were now stuck in their houses, right? Which people were doing the best mentally? It was the people who had gardens, the people who had good space, like they had good spaces, right? You imagine being in lockdown in like a slum or in a bed sitter. What happened? See, Kenya had all those riots, right? That's what happened.
So the best strategy in terms of choosing where you want to live is thinking of just in case COVID happens again.
I mean, that's a reality.
To be locked down.
I think that's a reality. And I think especially if you're investing in real estate now, because we've already had COVID once, we are going to have another pandemic. That is obviously in the works. And if that's going to happen, I think a lot of people, since we started working at home, when we realized how long we were in lockdown, I'm not sure about Kenya, but I know I was in Uganda during lockdown and we were in lockdown for almost 3 years. So imagine if you were stuck in a bed sitter for 3 years. So for sure, people now, if you're investing and if you're building or if you're looking to buy your final home, you definitely should look at having enough space where you can be here for a long time. And that's why I really am I lean more towards wanting to buy land and building a home, as opposed to buying a one bed or a bed sitter. That would be my personal view. Because again, even if, the least people could do, at least the developers who are making the one beds, at least put a green space. Because if we get stuck again, you need something. I mean, what are you going to do? You can't just stay in the room. So even when you're investing, you have to look at that now. Again,
the second last time we had, because we've had a few architects on the show. One architect said something very relatable, but this was a direct link to health. And he told us that some of the designs of these houses can be linked directly to infant mortality, like children dying because of the design of the house.
Oh, the design. I haven't heard that.
The design in terms of, was it ventilation, I believe? Houses are not well ventilated.
Yes.
And it could be directly linked to respiratory illnesses to children.
I mean, respiratory illnesses can even just come from the material that you used to build. So like, if you've noticed, when you live in like cement houses, because that's not really natural, your mood, some of it can be toxic, right? Whereas if you see, traditionally, we used to build with like mud, natural resources, right? Which is, because your organ, like your skin is also an organ, right? So what you're breathing in. So because that's how we somehow find, air in the village is fresher, so we say, but it's just because there's less toxic there, like toxins there. I don't know about designing specifically that makes people ill, but I do know that there are studies that certain building materials do make people ill. So like certain plastering materials, certain paints. There's a time when there was a lot of lead in paint that made people ill.
You almost mentioned, or you did mention mood. You
Yes.
mentioned cement and then you mentioned mood.
Yeah, your mood. So even like sunlight, if you live in a room that has no sunlight, you'll be depressed more likely.
Are you saying that there are people out here who've probably broken up or been dumped in a relationship because of cement in the house they live in?
No, cement would be more like what you breathe in. So like mold.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not naturally occurring. Not all cement is naturally occurring. Basically, we go back to, I'm trying to find a way of putting it. It's like mud bricks are natural. It's from the earth, right?
Yes,
So it's
yes.
not actually toxic. But some of these manufactured things we have, exactly like how you have manufactured food, think of houses like manufactured houses, right? So it's the same thing. The same way how you'd rather wake up with sunlight than waking up with an alarm clock. I think you've known this, right? Like when you go, how if you sleep, okay, just try an experiment. If your bedroom has like good light, open the curtains and go to sleep, you'll wake up naturally with the sun.
I'll cut this part specifically for my mom and send it to her.
Okay.
You would rather wake up with sunlight than wake up with
an alarm
clock.
Yes.
And she used to have a problem with me waking up at 11 because that's where the sunlight is. That's when the sunlight comes out from where I used to live.
Why was it at 11?
I don't know, somehow. I was sure that if I wake up at 11, I'll get sunlight.
What do you mean wake up at 11? No, I mean the natural sun. The sunrise, it will wake you up if you have good light.
It has to be physically, not that the sun is out.
No. I'm saying it has to be. That's why you have the sun and the moon, right? The sun wakes you up. If you sleep in a room that has no windows, you won't wake up. Like your body won't wake up. You know that, right? That's why even when you design houses, you're meant to design the bedrooms where the sun rises, and then then your living rooms and like dining rooms should be where the sun sets, so that you're using less light in your building. And that's generally, like, morning light is better. That's why people are in a better mood when you have sunlight. You've never seen those apartments, when you're inside, you even just kind of feel sad because there's just, the mood is just not good.
You're sad as in you're sad, it's your house.
Yes.
So you look for excuses of other things that you think are making you sad, but it's actually where you live.
Yeah, it's even not having plants. There's a lot of movements. Having plants inside your house improves your mood, improves the oxygen. There's a lot of things you can do inside, like where you live, that is important, which is why, again, we go back to a lot of the social housing. Yes, you're giving people housing, but, you have to add some elements of green.
So do you do architecture or do you do psychology?
What do you mean? No, but it's all entwined in one. It's intertwined into one.
So for me to qualify to actually do, you have, as in the paint, CG has to, the cement, the mood.
It plays a lot. If you look at restaurants, having red makes you hungry. There's a lot. This subject would go on forever, but there's a lot of different emotions and things that is evoked by color, evoked by materials. That's why when look at this co-working space, we have an illusion of green because it makes you feel more relaxed.
So some restaurants, I'm eating because of the paint work they did, not because of
No,
what
it can make you
brought me
feel
there.
hungry. Okay, like when you see green, what do you think? You think holistic, holy, fresh, healthy, right? When you see blue, you think, blue chip color companies, official, proper. Yeah. When you see earthy tones, everything has a psychology to it, including even the building styles.
So then that's a whole new conversation of, even when you're engaging professionals, it's not just about the design. It goes deeper than that. How it will make you feel and the overall impact to your health because of the design you are exposed to yourself.
The materials you use. Or I know I'm sure you know this, but newborn children don't see colors. It's actually better to give them black and white rooms.
So babies are born as black and white?
No, some colors are actually very distracting. So that what some pediatricians suggest is to have simple shapes. That's also why cartoons are simple shapes.
Babies don't. You give me so much credit in terms of how much I know, because I'm like, now, what is cocomelon without all those colors?
Now, babies
don't even see all that.
Cocomelon overstimulates children. It's like too much dopamine. Haven't you seen when kids are watching it? They look crazy. Like they're overly excited and the noise is a lot.
But they don't see colors.
No, they do. What I'm saying is it's better. No, I'm saying about when they're first born. That's why, even like the distance of how they see. That's why they usually say black and white is good for children when they're very young. Cocomelon is a stimulant. It's like, think about like Red Bull. It's like, when you have a Red Bull.
Cocomelon is like weed for babies.
Yeah, it's like you're wired. Haven't you seen how kids watch it? Everything is like that. So even where you live,
it's cocaine for babies.
Okay, I didn't say it was cocaine. I said it was Red Bull. That's a difference. But the thing is, it really is, everything has an impact on how you are. Even what you wear. The same way how architecture affects politics, what you wear, it's the same thing. Do you not see that?
Architecture affects politics and architecture. Just as a highlight, I'm definitely diving into that research.
Yeah,
after
please
this.
go enjoy.
But other notable examples, like you mentioned Mussolini. Like for context, what's the kind of control that politics uses? I've read on gerrymandering in the US, whereby they demarcate areas to edge out people who are not likely to vote for them. Like black population is like strategically mapped out of an election zone, so that if a candidate does not have the hassle to entice the black vote. I've had that, but that is mapping. Now architecture, politics.
What do you mean? Urban planning still kind of falls into architecture. It's just urban planning is on a larger scale. So it's even like when you look at houses, right? You start off with like the common areas, right? Or even like a hotel, you enter the lobby first, right? Yes. That's for everybody. Then as it gets more exclusive,
yes,
you're going up, right? Or executive floors are at the top. That's still a form of control.
Really changed my perspective. Now I'll have to eat in restaurants that are not painted red so that I know I'm hungry for real.
No. I mean, you still be hungry, but the thing is, it will give you an emotion. You'll have a feeling, you'll have an emotion. And it's always done that. I mean, everything actually is designed to make you do something a certain way. Marketing is designed to do that. Architecture in a form is marketing. Okay. Countries use architecture to sort of show their, symbolism. Look at New York with the Statue of Liberty. So,
a statement.
Yeah.
But do you think Africa, and specifically Kenya in itself, is at the level where we can use the zoning thing is different. That's the blue zone, different conversation. That's different, right? Are we at a place, and beyond at we do campaigns in Kibra, Mathare, politicians do campaigns in the low-income neighborhoods. That's politics, right? Is Kenya so advanced that in terms of urban planning, we have that level of politicization of how houses are built?
I mean, I think it was established for us with the neighborhoods, because if you look at, I think now is the only time we've just started building luxury homes outside of Nairobi, right? Okay. So we have like our value, even New York is like this. In the heart of the city is the core value, right? So the high cost houses, the affluent things. And then as you spread out, it gets cheaper and cheaper. That happens everywhere across the world. That's everywhere. Yeah. Okay. But I think we already are there. I mean, already in Nairobi, if you look at people, most younger people, lower income earners live outside of Nairobi. Like further away. Yes. The more money you have,
you get closer.
The closer you live to amenities. So it's the same thing. So it's like everything has the same setup, I guess, or framework. Yeah.
Whoa.
Even hospitals have that.
Where?
I mean, look at Aga Khan. You have Zara Pavilion this side, and you have the general ward people. Then within you have hospitals, national hospitals, private hospitals. There's suggestions in every single bit. I mean, there's clearly demarcations.
Wow. Okay. Two things we can discuss. Two things before we close. Most of the things we've touched on, like in different segments. Yeah. I'll be very interested in, we promised our audience that we'll talk about how to approach feasibility studies.
Okay.
Like basically, and then Africa's economic position in the global market, especially in the wake of the ideas of exploitation and stuff. So how do you approach, like in its most basic form, how do you approach feasibility studies?
Depends if I'm approaching it individually or as a large-scale developer.
Okay.
If I didn't have the finances, I think I would just start off with basic research. And basic research doesn't mean you need to reinvent the wheel. It just means to look at what's around you within the area that you want to build. Okay. However, if you're doing something, if you're developing a property and you want to get a return, or you want to make sure that you build something that lasts or has that is valuable and that is of use, you would do a research study or feasibility by, number one, checking out competitors. Well, if you're a developer, it's not a competitor. You'd read Knight Frank, there's Citon, there's a bunch of real estate companies. And if you wanted to go a step further, you would hire consultants. But I will not lie, hiring consultants to write feasibility studies is costly. I would not suggest that for somebody who's building one apartment block for themselves or one house. Okay. So it depends, yeah. But really, it's just research. Yeah, it's just taking initiative on your own. Okay. If you were building big developments, yes, you hire a consultant. Mm-hmm. They basically run the numbers for you. They tell you what the uptake will be in a couple of years, and then you build it based on that. So you're building with information. Okay. Yeah. And at the end of the day, you're doing all this so that you can get a return on your investment. Yes, or if you want to unlock funding. So if you know you have a project that you want to do, but you have to go to the bank and pitch your idea, you would hire a consultant to do a feasibility study to basically assure the bank that you've dotted all your I's and crossed all your T's, and you're saying, if I build this in this area, this is probably what I'm going to make. Okay. So it gives the bank assurance that you know what you're doing. Oh, yeah. Nice. Thank you for that. Africa's economic positioning in the global market. We are the youngest, you say, but we're still grappling with, and I'll also do research on this, depopulation. It's not deliberate. We will do research, see if, let's say, we are living in our heads. Is it conspiracy theory or something that we really need to pay attention to? People always talk of Congo being one of the richest countries in the world. It is. It is. That's why it has to be so unstable. Because where there's chaos, there's money to be made. Where there's chaos, there's money to be made. Yes. So the poorest country in the world is technically the richest country in the world. It is, because the whole entire world is benefiting from Congo's natural resources. And if we're using natural resources, I personally deem the young population of Africa as a natural resource. I think shipping us out, in a sense, is like our natural resource. Otherwise, why is there so much focus on trying to get, you've seen all these companies advertising jobs for young people to go abroad. Yeah. And to me, that is Africa's natural resource as well, our population. And that's why I feel like they try and control it. I think the best description I've come across lately in terms of the labor migration thing, because I've been reading on slave trade for the past 2 or 3 weeks, right? Is technically, this is new age slave trade. Like slave trade has evolved. It is. And they're controlling us. They're continuing to control us. Nothing has changed, actually. No. Because before that, I think we had the brain drain, right? When they took, I think even, which flights did we have here? The one when Wangari Maathai was on the flight. There's one when they took clever people here and they went to study in America. The one that carried Obama's father. Yes, and that was like the brain drain. And that has been going on in Africa for a long time. Meaning, all the people in the diaspora, like our best brains that could be fixing Africa have gone. That's, again, our natural resource. Now, because we are such a young population, again, you're taking our young population away, which is technically our workforce. There's 2 arguments to that. One would be the so-called brain drain is that the diaspora sends, and this is a very simplistic way to look at it, like most of the foreign exchange that's in this country is coming from the diaspora people sending money back, right? And the counter argument would be
if like the brilliant minds of Africa were let to be in Africa, would we be in a better place
Yes.
applying them as a resource?
By far. I actually really believe that. I think if Africa got back the brains that we lost, and I say brains by meaning the people, but because you see, many Africans who've left Africa, it's from frustration, right? You're trying to do something here, you're trying to get somewhere here, and then you can't, so you leave.
You go to the people who are
Yes,
frustrating.
and I think on purpose, there's a weird cycle, or like I feel like sometimes that's exasperated by Western countries to make Africa so chaotic and so unlivable that they ensure that basically Africans will irritate their own Africans to leave. Because honestly, why would you want to come back here and struggle when you could just go and be paid better elsewhere? Think about it.
My mind may be biased kidogo because I'm thinking it's on this platform again that I guess says something that sets me off, as in on a very interesting path, that everything in this world is available in abundance, but the system of capitalism has created a strategy to create artificial scarcity in which creates value in certain things, right? And then now people are distracted from abundance and they focus on what's little, what's less. In this sense, gold is available, but it is controlled.
Yes.
Oil is available, but it is controlled.
But it's controlled by chaos.
Yes.
Here, I'll speak for Africa. It's controlled by chaos. And every time you have one leader that tries to bring unity or something like that, they have to go. Yes, they disappear. Like Gaddafi, like Lumumba, like Kwame Nkrumah. When people have a different ideology, that's why I think the AU, it struggles to really come together, because nobody actually really wants it to work. When I say nobody, I don't mean Africa.
And what you say about that is there's also truth in that, because I have watched a documentary.
Yes.
And it's done by Jamal. Simon Chege from our team introduces me to a great storyteller from Tanzania called Jamal, who has done a very interesting story on Mobutu Sese Seko, who is linked to the death of Lumumba, right? And something interesting comes up in the narration of who Mobutu was. He plundered his country, but his protection over the decades he ruled that country was by foreign powers.
Yes.
So their interest was not in his development of his country, and they did nothing about his plundering.
Yes.
Until he outlived his usefulness.
Yes, because they need to keep us in chaos. Because if the whole world is stealing from Africa, there was an interest, I can't remember where I heard this, but I believe it was World War II. People kept talking about how much America had spent money to help World War II, to help the British come out of World War II and to restore Europe to its glory. But all the natural resources came from Africa. And the natural resources also including, how like Kenya was a colony. They were Kenyans that went to fight in World War II.
Yes.
That were seen as a resource.
Yes.
But we see we're never recognized for what Africa gives. Yet they take from Africa, then they come back and give us the same aid. You see what I mean? They take from us, and then they give us back our same aid.
Yes.
So unfortunately, that's really where I stand with that.
Wow. So so then I'm tempted to believe that we live in a system that is jinxed, like it's rigged against us, because yes, there is abundance, but there are people who have mastered the art of controlling the resources, such that people always compare like quality of life.
Yes.
A bedsitter in Pipeline, where it's super congested, and I think we did the mathematics with my former team at NTV, and we found that Nairobi, say for example, has a population of at that time, it was 4 million during the day, 5 million. 5 million during the day, 4 million at night, but 3 million lives in Pipeline, like sleeps in Pipeline, like that level. That's just to give an impression of congestion, for example. This is just for example purposes. So now someone compares the quality of life living in a bedsitter in Nairobi in any of the states versus going back to the village and having a whole acre of land for yourself, the whole space and everything. That is quality of life.
Yes.
But we've been made to believe that it is only by living in the city that we actually get to live.
Well, because they don't want us to occupy our own land because they're busy here on our land. I feel like the conversation will go further, but that's actually what that is. That is what it is. Because social media and marketing gimmicks are telling us living in the urban city makes more sense when truthfully it doesn't. We've already discussed the problems of being in a one bed and how depressed you can be. So as you've just rightfully said, when you now tell younger people, possibly look at going to be in the urban area, so going to be like in rural areas and farm or something else, they don't want to go there because it has a negative connotation. But that again, I would put it as a larger agenda of, and again, there's some higher powers or some higher people that want us not to occupy our land so that they can come and use our land. And that's why it's like I feel like there's another scramble for Africa, a new one coming. Already our borders were never drawn by us, our country's borders. So why do we think that they've stopped?
Understood.
I feel like it's the same thing. So that again, we come back, control the young population, put us all in urban areas, bed sitters.
Then take up the
yes,
rest
and
of the
eventually
land.
by the time we won't care about the land because now we're just being told how land is not important. This is important. By the time we wake up, the land will already be owned by the other people. It already is now with all of these conservancies.
And as we close, final point, is education a way out, or education has been misrepresented to us? In this sense, study, go to university, finish, get a job. Doesn't work nowadays, right? But also education, why I ask whether education has been misrepresented to us, when you look at, there's a difference between education in its textbook definition versus education in terms of knowledge. Like, you know how systems work, right? So you operate with knowledge of how the system works. So it's not what you've been told works. So is education a way out, Kwanza?
I feel like obviously education is always going to be a way out, but I think maybe education that is focused, that is made for us as Africans. I think our education systems, first of all, a lot of them is based on Western education or that framework. I think we need to look at that again. I think education and skills need to be put in, like having an apprentice, like being an apprentice or learning a skill. I think Africans need to take education back in their hands, including our history as well. If you look at some of the things that we learn in our local education, we learn so much about their history and their things, and we learn very little about ours. So I think Africa needs to look at the system of education again and cater it to us, to our actual people.
That would be like saying, that would be like a counter argument for the people who believe that, the white man brought education and that's what changed life.
No, they didn't bring education, but that's why, come on, Africa was home to very knowledgeable people. It's just that all our libraries were burnt. I think it was even in Timbuktu, there was the largest library, right? But they destroyed it so that we think that we didn't have any education here.
So we were gamed.
Yes. So what I really think is Africa should have its own version of education, its own system. The same way how the Chinese have their own systems, the Asians have their own way of teaching. I really think Africans need to sort of drop that narrative of British education, American education, and then sort of come back again and fix ours. I know this sounds, I'm also shooting myself in the foot here because I have been educated by the Americans and by the British. But I will say when I got older, it was very embarrassing to realize I knew so much history about their presidents and their, when they first went to their countries, and then like practically nothing about my own country and my continent. Those are the things I had to research later, which I think is silly. And then again, it brings us whitewashing. So, can I actually regain all the years that I got back, that I've been whitewashed from my school? No, I can't. And that's the bit that I think now younger Africans are more conscious of nobody actually wants to lose their identity. Many Africans who have learned the Western way or went to Western schools do secretly, I believe, secretly wish that they were more in touch with their roots than they are. Because there is a way of you lose your identity. And I think that's also how they have convinced us that living there or living abroad is better, or their way is better. It's just come by small brainwashing. So I would be very happy if Africa would look at doing the education systems again. If I could go back and choose what university I would go to, I probably would go to an African university. I probably would not waste my energy going outside to a country that won't even allow me to work for a year after.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's just my 2 cents. But our parents and our grandparents were told, to give your children the best is to send them
abroad.
Yes. And I think that at least is what's finally changing. And with that, I'm hoping we'll change our system, how we teach children, how we mark and what we call important, and just, we look at it. We don't have to do what we were told.
I would have asked you to probably give a highlight of a way out, but if our audience, and I believe they've been paying attention, you've answered it in multiple different ways.
I hope.
Multiple different ways. And in your Nini, what have you learned about money, by the way?
What have I learned about money?
Yeah.
I think you should ask me that in 10 years. No.
For real? You've not, okay.
No, I think money is... Having money gives you options, gives you choices.
Gives you choices.
Yeah.
So what's your idea of financial freedom?
Financial freedom is being able to make a decision. I mean, right now I go to work because I have to go to work. You like it, but you have to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked that because when we talked about having assets, but then you have to sell it because you're desperate.
Yes.
It means just having an asset is not like, you are not financially free unless you are, because you said, the exact words were, unless you're wealthy and you don't need to sell.
What do you mean, to keep your assets? I'm lost.
Yeah, financial, as in, I asked because financial freedom, most people assume that if I build a few flats here and there, I'm good, I'm sorted. But ideally, from our conversation, that's not necessarily the case, because at some point, if you don't do your calculation in terms of balancing your portfolio, when season changes, you may be forced to sell.
Yes.
So having an asset is not an absolute guarantee.
Because it's not, because you can't guarantee a market to sell your asset.
No further questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for making time for us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I've enjoyed this conversation
Same.
immensely. Good vibes.
Thank you.
Karibu.